अस्सलाम वालेकुम, कैसे हैं सब? खैरियत से ठीक हैं जी? Without any delay, let's listen to Justice Athar Minnallah from New York.
I said, how can these are also non-human breathing beings? They have to have their rights. But then I looked around all the jurisprudence of the world. There was no jurisprudence which recognized their rights, except which gives them those rights. So I realized that a dead human does not have rights. So why does a living human, a breathing human, whether that's an infant or a comatose or any person on a ventilator, why do they have? So there was another very big difficulty. I read about the jurisprudence with great respect. The Chief Justice, though he dissented, was about Happy the elephant in Bronx Zoo. And that was the time when I'd almost completed my proceedings. The Supreme Court of New York dismissed Happy's petition. It dismissed Happy's petition on two grounds. One ground was that it cannot bear legal rights and it cannot be accountable for its acts. And the second ground was that since it cannot do that, it's not a person. And the personhood, you see, though the judges were extremely sympathetic towards it. So then I realized why humans have human rights. That factor attribute that has the intrinsic value which needs to be protected is that life and life alone which gives rise to all these rights. So then that attribute, that intrinsic value is also there in case of the non-human animals. So then, again, you see there was a difficulty. The Supreme Court of New York, since they said we can't grant a habeas because it's not a person. So that was again a difficulty for me. And that was the correct approach because even in our constitution, then I realized that all these constitutions have been drafted by humans to regulate themselves, to protect themselves. That is why they are in the context of only a person. So then I find a way out by way of mandamus. And mandamus because I held that the right to life of humans is dependent on protection of natural habitats, of the ecosystems, and all these living beings. And it is the state's responsibility. So once I held that each one of those 900 non-human species in Marghazar Zoo, when I recognized their rights, then I issued a writ to the government to shift them to sanctuaries. Now,
celebrate love
with 1-800-Flowers.com.
We were 11 years old when we met.
And she didn't like me at all.
I didn't.
We played tennis together and I told him that I was pretty good and I wasn't.
You made me laugh a lot.
We've kind of just been laughing ever since.
He's one of a kind. I know I'm one of a kind, but he's one of a kind.
She makes me want to be a better person.
He's the most fun dad.
Oh, look at you.
We all have a love story.
That the sanctuary in Cambodia was prepared to take Kavan the elephant. So how to move him there? Even the contempt would not work because it was a very, very costly affair. So I was very, very fortunate. The court was very fortunate that the famous singer Cher, she got attracted. And she flew to Islamabad. And that is what solved my problems. The government succumbed, and the government itself started taking credit for it. I said, please do take credit, but have my judgment implemented.
I think everybody in this
Sorry,
room...
It has never happened that anywhere in any jurisdiction that the rights of non-human animals are recognized. A zoo is shut and the 900 inmates are all shifted to their sanctuaries or freed. It only happened in Pakistan.
Absolutely. And I think this is such an interesting story, and I wanted everybody to learn about it. What the members of the audience might not know is that this particular decision is now taught across universities and in almost every animal rights and animal law class. And that goes to show the step you took, the progressive nature of your decision, which we don't see every day. Like you said, we don't respect humans, and you were able to get your judgment implemented. Fantabulous. Now I think I want to segue back into the topic of the day. And you've joined the judiciary, you come to the bench, and now there is, because the Islamabad High Court, where Justice Minnallah was a judge, is a constitutional post, you are the protector of the Constitution. So how did you view your role as a judge when you first started?
I think for a judge, the starting point or the commitment is the oath that we take before we enter upon the office. That's a commitment to the people, and that is a commitment made to Allah. And that the wordings of each word of that oath has a sanctity. And that is the guarantee for independence of the judiciary and for being an independent judge. If you take an oath that you would fearlessly adjudicate whatever matter comes before you, and that you would not favor anyone, you would not fear anyone, and that you will defend, uphold, and protect the Constitution, that is it. Now, it depends, you see. Everyone takes oath. How an oath is violated, for me, it is inconceivable. But yes, oaths are violated. Every bureaucrat takes an oath. The armed forces take oath. The judges take oath. If only the oath was upheld and there was commitment with every word of the oath, the judiciary would be independent. There is no doubt about it.
Absolutely. But we've seen from your elephant example that it is so difficult for judgments to get implemented in Pakistan. So as a judge, how would you view your role in upholding the rule of law? Because I think an element of the rule of law is also implementation.
Well, I've served 4 years as the Chief Justice of the High Court, and then for 5 years as a judge. I've never experienced that any authority has even attempted not to implement my judgment. This was a different case because it was a complex case, and animals, you see, in any case, they are not valued the way the humans are valued. And then you see the cost was involved and the court couldn't afford the cost. And if the government had said that, sorry, we don't have the money, I mean, it would have been very difficult, but otherwise, it all depends on the judge, you see.
My dad was Captain David Wilson in the US Navy. He was a really amazing person. My dad died in February.
I mean, if people have confidence in a judge, and if the authorities know that the judge does not tolerate things that are not legal, they don't even attempt to violate the judgment or refuse the judgment to be implemented, because then the judge knows how to have his judgment implemented. If a judge cannot implement the judgment, that is probably undermining the independence of judiciary and rule of law. Every judgment has to be implemented, and it is the duty of the judge to have the judgments implemented. Otherwise, the authority of judiciary as an institution is eroded.
Absolutely. But there's also an element there of the judgment being worth implementation. The Supreme Court of Pakistan has upheld martial laws, and those judgments were implemented. So could you speak to that a little bit, that when it comes to the rule of law, what is the Supreme Court's role?
I mean, this is a very unflattering issue, you see, but we cannot erase the facts from history books. Yes, the Supreme Court's role has been what it should not have been. The Supreme Court has no authority to legitimize any unconstitutional act, let alone abrogation of the Constitution. The Supreme Court is the creation of the Constitution itself. And when the Constitution is violated, and if the Supreme Court fails in its obligation to protect and defend the Constitution, in my opinion, the judges are committing misconduct and they must be proceeded against. So it is not a question of legitimizing martial laws and implementing that judgment. The martial law is already implemented. The Supreme Court merely stamps it. It gives it, purportedly gives it legitimacy, which in my opinion, it cannot.
I think that also has parallels to a current decision in the United States Supreme Court regarding presidential immunity, and I know you're aware of it. What lessons can the rest of the world learn from Pakistan's experience when it comes to presidents who overstepped their bounds or committed acts whilst they were president?
You see, firstly, our constitution is a parliamentary democracy-based constitution. So the president is merely a figurehead. He doesn't have any power. So the only immunity is immunity that has been given to the president. So I'm of the view that it is not very significant. But in my opinion, a prime minister was dismissed from his office, an elected prime minister, because he took the plea that there was a presidential immunity. Yes, the presidential immunity was there. And the Supreme Court, in my opinion, with great respect to the Supreme Court, could not have removed and dismissed or unseated the elected prime minister on that ground. So immunity is not there as far as the prime minister is concerned, who has the powers as an elected prime minister. But as far as the judgment is concerned, I think I wouldn't like to comment on that because the chief judge is also here. I leave this to the chief judge, you see. I would be more concerned about my Pakistan, you see, and its constitution.
I had to give it a shot. But so let's move back to Pakistan then. Let's now squarely focus in on judicial independence and judges. What role do you think the appointment of judges plays in a judge being independent when he does take office?
Well, you see, again, we have a very unflattering past as far as appointment of judges, and the process of appointment of judges is also concerned. I don't know how many of you are aware of this because there are a number of distinguished guests seem to be from Pakistan as well. During Ayub Khan's authoritarian rule, the High Court judges, which was a constitutional court, their appointment was subject to being interviewed by the uniformed ruler, General Muhammad Ayub Khan. So one can imagine the independence of those judges, you see. I mean, a judge who consents to become a judge after being interviewed by a person in uniform who is only trained in the art of warfare and who has an authoritarian rule, I'm afraid it speaks volumes for the independence of judiciary. So we started from there. And then the only good thing that has happened in Pakistan was the 18th Amendment. And the 18th Amendment has caused a lot of political instability because 18th Amendment shook the status quo. It took away powers from the de facto rulers. And the 18th Amendment, I must say, the credit goes to that parliament which passed the 18th Amendment. And for the first time in the 18th Amendment, the process, a transparent process, an accountable process of appointment was judges also included. But unfortunately, and with great respect, the Supreme Court, headed by Chief Justice Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry, thought that that was in violation of the principle of independence of judiciary. In my recent dissenting judgment, I've taken a different view. And that was the time when the Supreme Court, after being restored, after that heroic struggle by the people and lawyers of Pakistan, was about to undo and strike down that 18th Amendment. But in the end, the Parliament was virtually forced to pass the 19th Amendment. And after that, the Supreme Court bench virtually made that 19th Amendment redundant as well. And again, I would say that it was not fair to those 90 people who were martyred, and who had laid down their lives. And those young, imbued, idealist youth who had struggled for democracy and supremacy of the Constitution. Yes, the process has to be very, very transparent. But let me share with you, when I became the Chief Justice, there were only 3 judges at that time in the High Court. And the image of the High Court was not what it was now, or what happened after a few years. They thought that it was a High Court which should be shut. But when I became the Chief Justice, I knew that a High Court is known by its independent judges. And independent judges, that ensures independence of that court. So it was a task for me. I had my own way of doing it. I did headhunting. And the difficulty was that the people that I selected, and Chief Judge, let me share with you, the concept of independence of judiciary in a society which has established democracy and a society which has a regime that is either hybrid in nature or authoritarian. The concept of independence of judiciary is very different in those societies. In a society where the rule of law and democracy are weak, in those societies you need judges who are not only competent, who do not only have integrity, but they are fearless as well. So the difficulty was how to find these judges. So the judges that I identified, the difficulty then was they were not willing to become judges because they were so independent. They were, their practices, you see, they were making a lot of money. So how to convince them? In one case, it took me 3 years only to convince him. The other, I took 2 years to convince him. Now let me share something with you as well. When their names were recommended for elevation to the Judicial Commission, though no one doubted their integrity, no one doubted their competence, but because of their fearlessness and because of their progressive thoughts, the system started resisting. And there was such a resistance that even the then elected Prime Minister attempted to resist those appointments, not realizing that every Prime Minister who is in office forgets that one day he would be out of office and would require independent judiciary and independent judges. As long as they are in office, they forget this. But when they are on the wrong side of the powers, then they realize how important it is to have independent judges. So I can say with confidence that the judges elevated to the Islamabad High Court, only time will tell. The Chief Judge mentioned about the 6 judges who had written the letter. 5 out of them were identified, headhunted, and recommended by me.
I would love to go on and on, but Mohammed just told me we don't really have that much time. And you've already touched upon a lot of the topics in terms of being forward-looking and what a judge needs to have in order to be judicially independent. So I want to give the audience some time for questions, but from my side, it has been an honor to be able to have this conversation with you. Can I see, are there any questions? The lady in the back.
They can't hear her. Okay. Why don't you come here? Probably everyone can hear you then.
Listen.
Good evening. It's really an honor to have you here with us tonight. And my name is Amara Farooq, and I do have 3 questions, but courtesy to everyone else, I'll just stick to 1 question. And if we have time, I'll get back to you. So my first question is 2-pronged question. And it's about, given your extensive experience in judicial system of Pakistan, what were some of the challenges and fears that you and your family personally faced with respect to security, and how did you tackle it? Okay, I'm gonna sit, so if you don't mind. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So my first question is a 2-pronged question. Given your experience, extensive and courageous experience in judicial system of Pakistan, what were some of the challenges and fears that you and your family has faced personally with respect to security, making decisions, and how did you tackle them? And second prong of that question is that what is your cautionary advice to a young Pakistani American attorney who wants to contribute and become part of Pakistan judicial system?
This is very interesting. Interesting because you see, I think for a Pakistani judge, there are challenges, yes, but a judge is blessed when the family supports him. So I can only share with you that I've been dealing, or I've dealt with, and probably, I don't know why, in Islamabad High Court, there were so many politically consequential cases since 2017. And for some odd reason, I dealt with most of them. Now that was the time, which was a very difficult time for a High Court judge. A High Court judge would never know of any pressure if he does not give access to those who can influence him or her. So yes, I didn't know about any pressures. But it's, when you talk about independence of judiciary, we have always focused on insulating the judiciary from the other branches of the state. There are 2 other very important aspects, and that is internal independence and the institutional independence. when the Supreme Court is seen as complicit, the challenge for a High Court judge is far more greater. So when in 2018, at that time, there was another political party and another political leadership who were on the wrong side of the powerful de facto rulers. So I didn't get any pressure from outside. But if you don't give access, then attempts are made to discredit you on the social media, by using the social media, and in a very organized way. I mean, when I suspended those three sentences, I mean, my family was literally in tears. My siblings' photographs, our privacy was encroached. And then my integrity here would have believed. The way they propagated that I got 2 flats in bribe. I was with the Supreme Court judge in a car. We took a photograph. That went viral. And it had a caption down there mentioning me with the president of a political parties in London. But I had my duty. I was committed to my oath. And that propaganda was so strong that even those who were very close to me started believing that probably I might have got those 2 flats. I also started doubting myself. I said, maybe. You see, because it was so strong. Then my wife, my siblings would get telephone calls from those who knew us, saying that we never knew that your brother or your husband was like this. Yes, those are challenges. Only recently, I wrote a note. The personal data of my 2 sons was put on the social media and obtained from a government organization. My wife, who has nothing to do with politics, and they had made up a documentary. Yes, those are challenges. But that is a test of a judge. That is a test of a judge's independence. But the wonderful thing is that those who used to propagate against me till 2022, things all of a sudden changed. They came on this side of the rostrum, and the other side was then on this side. Today, there is a different propaganda from those who benefited from Islamabad High Court when no other High Court was giving relief. But that again is a test of a judge. That determines the people's confidence in a judge or a court. And a judge must not be afraid of criticism. Yes, it hurts when the integrity is doubted or aspersions are cast on the integrity. It does hurt. When I was leaving, I was told about this August gathering. I mean, so many things were said, but I've always believed in one thing. It is the truth that always comes out and always prevails. A judge has taken an oath. He or she must be prepared for these challenges. Yes, momentarily, it affects the family members. It does. But then, if they are supportive, that is the greatest blessing of a judge. I hope that answers my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can only take one more question.
Yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate Honorable.
Well, you had a mic all the time.
Yeah. Honorable Judge's time. We really honor and appreciate your judgment to strengthen the Constitution and democracy in Pakistan. But my question is, your Honorable Court opened your court on 9th of April very late. Can you answer why? And there are petitions of Ashad Sharif in Supreme Court of his gruesome killing, and the ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, is asking Judicial Commission on 9th. Why the Supreme Court is not listening those petitions? Can you explain to us, please? Thank you.
You have asked me this question about opening the court at night. Midnight.
Yes.
Right? It is a political narrative. I know about that. But what do you know about the Islamabad High Court? The day I took over, the next day, what was the first circular that was issued by me? Do you know that?
Somehow, yes, I read about that in Dawn.
What is that circular? I want to know from you. You believed the political narrative, but you never, you see, you also doubted my integrity by believing a narrative without knowing the facts. So let me tell you, and probably it's an opportunity to tell you and tell all those who have believed in this false narrative. And no other high court has ever done that. The day I took over, the next day I issued and that is on record. I believe that Islamabad High Court was a constitutional court, and it was its duty to remain open for 24 hours. But in the same circular, I had prescribed the procedure that anyone, no matter what time, wants to file a petition, would call the number. That petition would come to me. If the High Court would always open, the lights would open, because the staff would go to attend to that matter, whether that was 3 a.m., that was 4 a.m. And that circular is still on record. 1,400 people benefited from that circular. Nobody knows about them because they were not political people. They were ordinary poor people. And only the Islamabad High Court did that during the 4 years that I was the Chief Justice. There were petitions of enforced disappearances received late in the evening at night. And one was that of Matiullah Jan, a journalist. I received that late in the evening. The High Court was open for everyone. Now, what happened that night? Did I come to the High Court? You tell me, you asked me this question, did I come to the High Court?
I think so, yes.
You think so? And how did you get this information? And let me now inform you. I was at home. I was informed that there was a situation and people want to file petitions. And then they informed me that the Supreme Court Bar Association President, Mr. S.N. Boone, has requested to file a petition. So I said, take all the petitions, send to me. If they are necessary, they would WhatsApp those petitions to me. If they were necessary, I would have passed an order. Did I pass an order? So what? Who wanted to do something very unconstitutional or illegal that they got so afraid that only lights were lit? Again, now I tell you something very interesting. I was in my pajamas and I didn't know, you see, because the staff, it was their duty to go to the High Court to receive. I saw the petitions, they were frivolous petitions. I didn't pass any order. If I had to stop someone and I didn't go to the High Court at all, I was in my pajamas and I was taking out something from the fridge. And my wife said, oh, come, see what ARY is saying. They are lamenting that why did he reach the High Court? I said, really? But now I tell you, firstly, you all believed it. Had I passed any order, then probably you may have been right. But you did not even inquire. That happened in 2021. Since 2018, 1,400 petitions were entertained by me at night, in the evening, or after the office hours. And yet, a political narrative was made that why the court was open. So now let me tell you something. What were the television stations saying? Though at that time I didn't realize it. I was watching ARY in my pajamas. I didn't even bother to change because I didn't have to go. I didn't have to pass any order. So the ARY, you see, I don't want to name them, they created a situation as if martial law is going to be imposed. I wish every time there is a threat of martial law, the courts remain open. I wish they were open on 5th of July when General Ziaul Haq was removing an elected prime minister. I wish they were open on 12th of October when General Pervez Musharraf had thrown out an elected prime minister. If anyone had attempted to remove unconstitutionally an elected prime minister till then, Mr. Imran Khan, then it would have been a test of the Islamabad High Court whether it stands up to uphold the Constitution or not.
Thank you, Justice Minnallah. I can't take any more questions. I'll let the president take it.
All right. Well, I don't think we can entertain all of the questions tonight. We're gonna have a reception. We're gonna. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to continue this conversation elsewhere. We're gonna have a reception outside in the hall in the area right adjacent to the Great Hall. Thank you for coming, everyone, and have a great evening. That's very entertaining.
Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you guys liked the session. Inshallah, we'll have a more conversation. I think just what Justice Athar Minnallah said, it should be, discussed, and inshallah, we'll get more time and discuss various points very eloquently and bravely said. So with that, let's end our live session too. And thank you so much for joining. And please go ahead, and if you are watching through X, please join us and follow us. And if you are through YouTube, please subscribe us so that we can continue such kind of discussions. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.